Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In this session, our guest will be speaking on how to get more emails delivered and open without getting sent to spam. You're going to want to stick around because today you're going to learn how to get in 75% of the world's email inboxes and stay out of spam, the importance of engagement when it comes to deliverability, and the smart method to make sure your emails get delivered the right way, and much, much more. So you'll want to keep it locked to the very end, through the end, because our presenter for this session today is Adrian Savage. Adrian is the email marketing geek. He's an entrepreneur and co-founder of Email Smart. He has helped hundreds of thousands of businesses get emails seen so they can get more sales. And he's worked with the likes of Frank Kern, Stu McLaren, Neil Patel, Ryan Levesque, Shark Group, and Glazer Kennedy to help them all improve email performance. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Adrian. Adrian, how you doing, my man?
Hey, Vernon. I'm doing good, thanks. It's great to be here.
There's a crazy stat out there that says that I found that you've delivered through like your platforms and software that you've built 1 billion emails. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's got to be nearly 10 years now since I created some software to help specific people get more of their emails delivered. And yeah, in that time, we're well over 1 billion now. So it's quite a nice statistic. We've worked with a lot of emails.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited to dig in today. And I know that there's a lot of changes going on with email. Depending on when people watch this, they may be seeing some things drop in terms of the deliverability, their open rates. Maybe let's start with the basis and foundation of just like the fundamentals of what people should know and the importance of like authentication.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you remember, I've lost track of when it was now, a few years ago when Apple brought out iOS 15 and they introduced the mail privacy protection, and suddenly it's like, hey, you can't trust open rates anymore. All the stats are kind of, all over the place. And it's one of these things where it was talked about for a long time. There was this big kind of people talking about how it's going to be the end of the world for marketing and all this kind of thing. And then it happened, but it wasn't a big bang. It was this kind of slow phase thing. So like by the start of, say, I think it was 2022, then things were starting to change, and it took a while. And what's happened now is something very similar, because Google and Yahoo have started working together on this. And back in, I think it was about October 2023, they said, hey, we're going to bring in some new rules. We're going to be making them effective as of February the 1st, 2024. And if you don't set up proper authentication for all of your emails, then we're going to start filtering them. And that led to lots of predictions of email Armageddon, email apocalypse, no emails getting seen, all this kind of thing. And here we are, we're in March at the moment, March 2024 as we're talking now, and nothing's happened. All these new rules have come in, everyone panics about it, and all the folks that haven't fixed their stuff yet are still sitting pretty and everything's going great. So it's like, what's that all about? So what's actually happened, and it probably won't matter when someone listens to this, because the rules will still be there and the enforcement is going to ramp up. But what they're saying now is that from April 1st, 2024 onwards, they're going to do a phased introduction of their enforcement processes. So what that means, and I'll just use a couple of kind of geeky terms for a second, which I can't avoid, I'm sorry. So you first of all need to make sure you have got DKIM, which is DKIM, set up, stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail, which doesn't mean anything to me. It means you've got to be sending out a digital signature with every email that you send. And the way you do that is you go into your email platform and you set it up, and it will say, hey, you've got to publish a record in your domain. And then once you've done it, it kind of works. And then the second thing then is something called DMARC. And I'm not even going to tell you what that stands for because I always forget it. It's all about, message conformance or something like that. And that's the other thing that has to be set up as well. And the idea being that if you don't have authentication set up correctly, DMARC tells the world what to do with those emails. Do you deliver them anyway? Do you reject them? Do you put them into spam? And what Google and Yahoo are saying is if you don't have DKIM set up, you don't have DMARC set up on for every platform you send email from, then it could get filtered. So imagine that kind of nightmare scenario where you send out an email, and instead of getting a 50% open rate like you're used to, you might get a 5% open rate. And the good news is that won't happen overnight. And in theory, once you've got everything set up, then it should be good forever. But the thing to bear in mind is that sometimes people move from one domain provider to another. They might switch DNS. They might change email platforms. There's all these things. So there's always that risk that things can go wrong, which is why I'd say it's always worth keeping on top of your authentication and make sure it is working. Because if the first thing you do is you find out when you send out a big email blast and suddenly no one receives your emails, then that's going to be a bad thing. So it's making sure that you set it up correctly, and I'd say, make sure you're monitoring this stuff from time to time. You can get free DMARC reporting platforms and things like that, where you can actually keep an eye, get a weekly report sent to you that's going to tell you that everything's still okay. So it's a really important thing to focus on, because we're going to talk about the smart framework that we've got that tells you what the really important things are to get your emails delivered, and this is one of the foundations within that. If you don't get your authentication right, then your emails aren't going to get through, period. Really important to get this right.
Yeah, and the people that are listening, just so you're aware, Adrian, is that these are 7-8 figure webinar marketers. They're not they're not like traditional users. These are high volume people. They're cranking out emails for follow-ups. They're cranking out emails to get people to butts and seats, to the first to the first webinar. There's follow-up sequences. So there's a ton of emails. So let's talk about this smart framework that you guys have, but in the context of that, because I would imagine that, it's probably, there's some things that we have to do differently as webinar marketers than traditional, marketers that are sending emails.
Yeah. Because the thing to bear in mind is the bigger your email list and the higher your sending volume, the more that the eyes of Google, Yahoo, Microsoft are going to be on you as an email sender. Unless you've got some kind of very, very unusual niche audience that's in business to business, if your email list is a typical kind of consumer list, you've got to expect that 75, 80, 90% of your list is going to be people on Google, Yahoo, Microsoft. So that means that they set the rules, you've got to follow the rules. If you don't, then sooner or later they're going to give you a slap. And if you end up in Google jail, it's very hard to get back out. I've worked with people where they've been getting maybe less than 1% of their emails delivered to Google, and it's taken about 3 months to rehabilitate them and get them out. And if you're depending on webinars for your revenue, and suddenly you can't promote them anymore, that's a big deal. So it's really important that you actually make sure you're staying on the right side of the rules, because if the first thing you find out is when your open rates have gone through the floor, that's too late. You've got to stay ahead of the game always. And the thing to remember is that the world of email marketing is always changing. Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, they're always evolving their rules because they want to give a better experience for their users and they want to make more money. At the end of the day, you've got to remember that those email platforms are free. The way they make the money is advertising. And if you're not sending emails to people that are opening your emails, they're not going to like you because they can't make money out of you. So you've got to make sure that you're following the rules, getting as many people as you can to see and open your emails, and that way then they're going to like you. Simple as that.
Well said, well said. So I think your smart system or the smart method starts with M. What does this SMART acronym stand for?
Okay, so I'll go through them quickly and mention all 5, and then we'll dig straight into the first one. So we've got the S is for shift your thinking, M is for manage your engagement, A is authenticate your emails, R is raise your reputation, and T is transform your content. And if we start with shifting your thinking, then what we have to do is realize that our email list isn't necessarily an asset. Now, most people...
Interesting. Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because for years, I've always heard the email list is the biggest asset, biggest asset.
And if you get it right, it can and it will be. But what you have to remember is that if you get it wrong, your email list is going to become a liability. Because if you're mailing the wrong people, and the wrong people are typically the ones that aren't going to open your emails, then the mailbox providers are going to stop liking you. And if they don't like you, they won't deliver your emails, and that's what that spam folder's for over there, because that's where all your emails will go if you're not following the rules, if you're not thinking right. So, the good old days, when I started doing email marketing, 2011, 2012, it was really cool. You just built the biggest list you could, and then you just mail the hell out of it until people buy or die or unsubscribe. If you do that these days and you're not a bit more discerning about the way you send stuff, then you're going to fall flat on your face sooner rather than later. So it's really important that people recognise that things have moved on a lot in the last 12 years or so. And there's a lot of rules, and it's Google, it's Yahoo, it's Microsoft that set those rules. And if you don't follow the rules, they're in charge. They won't deliver your emails. Now, email is still much better than social media and things like that, because it's very hard to get shadow banned on email. As long as you don't do stupid things, then you're still going to get through. Whereas if you're on Facebook or Instagram or something like that, it takes one complaint and maybe you're shut down for a month, 3 months, forever, whatever. With email, you've got a lot more control as long as you're thinking right about this and not doing crazy things. And that's a great way to move straight into the manager engagement part, which is the M in SMART, because engagement management is what it's all about. It's about making sure you are only mailing the people that are most likely to open your emails. We've talked about Google and Co. making money out of email, and this is how they do it. The only people that are going to open your emails are the ones that have opened something recently. Remember Einstein's definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And if you're mailing the same person week in, week out, and they haven't opened anything for the last 3 months, why are they going to suddenly open the next email you send? They're not going to do it. So you've got to work out, what is your point of no return? How many days or weeks is it from when they last opened an email before they're not going to open another one? And in most cases now, this is a really shocking statistic, somewhere between 15 and 25 days is that drop off. If they haven't opened an email from you within the last 15 to 25 days, depending on your audience, you've probably lost them forever. So you can't wait until 60 or 90 days before you send some kind of re-engagement email now. I've created some software that will analyze an email list, will look through all the sending history, and will say, this is your point of no return. It might be, for our list, it's 19 days. So that means that we have to set up a re-engagement campaign that goes out around day 18, 19, 20, something like that, saying, hey, you're still there. If you don't reply, if you don't click this button, we're going to take you off our list. So it's all about making sure you're managing that engagement. And also, obviously, we know that Apple changed the rules with open tracking. We can't be too sure what's happening. So we have to look at clicks as well now. And if you're mailing people that have never, ever clicked a single link on your emails, how much money are you going to make from that person?
Not a lot.
Absolutely zip. You won't make a cent from that person if you can't get them to click a link in the first week or so when they've signed up to your mailing list. If you can't get them to click on that attendance link for your webinar, you're not going to make a penny from them. So you've got to be very, one of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing people make now with their engagement is they're not looking at clicks. You can't just remove everyone who hasn't clicked in the last 30 days, because sometimes it will take 3-4 months between people clicking. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But what you can do is you can find the people that have never clicked, or maybe haven't clicked for, say, 6 months or 12 months or longer. And if you keep mailing those folks, then you're not really helping yourself. You're much more likely to get spam complaints from those people. When we work with a couple of different email providers where they send their bad clients to us and we have to rehabilitate them. And the biggest thing that we see with those folks is they get lots of spam complaints. And Evan, who's my buddy and business partner, he did a lot of analysis on this. We found that probably 95% or more of spam complaints come from people that have never clicked a link in an email. So if you want to keep your complaints down, keep your list clean, search for all those folks that have never clicked. And when we analyse people's lists, and this is why this is such an important metric that no one else talks about, more than 50% of a typical email list will have never clicked a link in an email ever.
Wow. More than half of the list has
Absolutely.
never clicked an email. Wow.
Yeah. Which means,
that's insane.
And people talk about list size as a vanity metric, right? And it truly is. If they haven't clicked, they're not worth anything. So the chances are that your email list is probably only half as good as maybe you thought it was, unless you're managing this stuff. So, this is why you've got to really stay on top of this. If you don't, then sooner or later, Google will get upset with you. And again, they just start sending your emails into spam, and that's that. And then you've got to do a lot of work. You can fix it, but it takes time. So much better to stay squeaky clean. And as my buddy Evan says, don't take a deep dive head first into Lake Stupid.
So it sounds like with every email you should be sending a link, just like to some kind of call to action, some kind of engagement.
Yeah, totally. And don't be afraid to send lots of emails. As long as you're sending them to the people that have engaged recently, you can send very frequently. But there's no point sending loads of emails to people that haven't opened for a long time, because you're just hurting yourself by doing that. That's the big thing to remember.
And then does this change like with a post webinar sequence, right? We could be sending multiple emails.
Yeah.
Typically not sending multiple emails in a day until like the last day when cart closes. Is there any like best practices or things that we should or shouldn't be doing there?
I would say it's pretty pointless sending all of the kind of cart close emails to the folks that haven't engaged throughout that whole follow-up sequence, because they're unlikely to open the cart close emails. You're going to get lower open rates, lower performance, and Google are going to say, hey, why is this person sending all these emails to people that aren't opening? I'm going to put more emails into spam. So it's much better just to focus on the real hot people that you know have stayed engaged, they attended the webinar, or they've watched the replay or whatever, they've clicked a few links, they've opened a few of the emails. If someone registered for the webinar and then they didn't attend, they didn't watch the replay, they didn't open any emails, why on earth would you send them the follow-ups? Because they're just not going to engage, you're going to hurt yourself. So it's be a lot more discerning about who you're mailing.
So we should be segmenting. It sounds like you're saying we should be segmenting those people out, like from the follow-up campaign, if they haven't engaged at all. Okay.
Yeah, because let's face it. Even if they saw the email, if they've not watched the email or read any of your follow-up, why would they buy something they've not read or watched anything about anyway? So definitely worth being. In the past, people did this before they started the campaign. They say, right, let's find everyone that meets our criteria. We'll put them through the webinar funnel. We'll invite them. We'll send all the follow-up, whether they attend or not. We've got to do this differently now. We've got to be a lot more laser focused on who we mail and who we leave out.
Awesome. And then, so is it the authenticate? Is that the A piece in the?
Yes, it is indeed. So that's the bit I talked about at the start. I don't need to go much more into that. The only thing that I'll say there is just make sure it's not just your email marketing platform. It's everything you use. If it's a webinar platform that sends emails out, if it's your marketing platform, your membership site, your help desk, and if you're using Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, whatever you use to send your everyday emails, they all need to be set up. Make sure you do that. That's the important thing.
In addition to like our autoresponder, like you're saying, we have to go and work on these things. Okay.
Yeah. So plenty to do with authentication. The good news is once you set that up, it's a one-off thing. Unless you change platforms or change DNS providers or something like that, or change your hosting, you don't have to go back and revisit it. So it's the sort of thing you can outsource as well, because you don't have to become an expert in authentication. Get someone to do it, pay them to do it as a one-off, and then you're done. Move on.
100%. And then you have the R, I guess. Right?
Yeah, raise your reputation. So reputation is absolutely everything. And it's not what you think about your reputation or what I think about it. It's what Google, it's what Microsoft, it's what Yahoo, and all those other mailbox providers think about reputation. And it's based on, like I said, it's how do you behave as an email citizen? How do you send your emails? What's your behavior? Are you doing it the right way or not? And again, we've talked about the rules already. We'll mention content in a minute, but the main thing that matters is just around the whole engagement and the authentication. Get those bits right and it's much easier. If you send lots of spammy emails out and get loads of complaints, then guess what? Your reputation is going to go down the toilet very, very quickly. If you're not sending authenticated emails, you're going to have a problem. If you mail 90% of the people on your list who have never opened anything, you're going to have a problem. But as long as you're mailing the right people who have engaged recently and you're doing it in the right way with the right content and it's engaging, then your reputation is going to be good. And again, if you are sending out a lot of emails, if you're a successful webinar marketer, you need to make sure that you're keeping an eye on that reputation. You need to monitor it, because if you're not monitoring it, and again, if the first thing you know is that you're getting a 5% open rate instead of 50%, then that's too late. Now, you can't easily check what your reputation is with Microsoft and with Yahoo. Some of the software I've developed, it allows us to infer that reputation. There's ways around that. But Google, they've really helped us. They've created something called Google Postmaster Tools. And if you haven't heard of that, you've got to check it out. You just go to postmaster.google.com, sign up for free. And they will tell you what your reputation is in their opinion. There's all kind of different things, but the main thing you want to look at is just your domain reputation. It's either high, medium, low, or bad. If it's high, happy days. If it's medium, most of your emails will still get through. If your reputation goes to low, most of your emails will go to spam with Google. If your reputation gets to bad, everything's going to go to spam. So you need to check that maybe once a week, something like that. Again, we've developed a monitoring tool for that because you don't want to wait for it to happen. You want to get an alert if possible. So, we keep an eye on that stuff and make sure that as soon as that reputation goes from high down to medium, that's like your kind of warning alarm. You've got to go and fix things quick before it gets any worse. But most people, luckily, they stay with a high reputation. The other thing those Postmaster tools shows you that's quite useful is they've got a spam complaints and a feedback loop report, and both of those things will tell you how many spam complaints you're getting from Google users. Because a little thing to bear in mind, if someone hits the spam button inside Gmail, it almost never gets sent back to your autoresponder platform. So you're flying blind with Google there. Google maintain their little lists of all the bad senders, and if you get too many spam complaints, then obviously they're going to stop. They're going to block your mails. But those complaints don't get sent back to your Active Campaigns, your HubSpots, your Mailchimps, whatever you're using. You'll see them from Microsoft and Yahoo, so you'll get an idea. But if you see a 0.1% spam complaint inside your mail platform, you can bet that there's going to be a much higher percentage because the Google stuff doesn't get through. So again, use Postmaster tools, keep an eye on your reputation, and behave like a good email system, and that's going to keep you on the right side of the Google law.
I did have a question about the domain reputation.
Sure.
If you're using a new email, let's say you're launching a new webinar, new product,
Yep.
should you be launching that on like a subdomain, or should you be launching that on like a burner domain? Where it doesn't, if you're sending massive amounts of traffic, it doesn't burn your main email, your main domain.
You've got to be very careful. So first thing to remember is if you ever set up a burner domain, then Google are very clever and they can join the dots. They can work out what your main domain is because you're going to be using some kind of platform that you are also using on your main domain, or there might be some kind of, if you're even mentioning your business name in the email, their AI will pick it up and they will link it all together. So I've seen people set up a burner domain and basically spam the hell out of it. The reputation went through the floor, but they were really, really caught out when a few days later the domain reputation of their main domain went south as well.
Wow.
And they were suddenly in trouble. So occasionally I would say use a subdomain if you want to keep your marketing emails separate from your sales, from your customer service. But I only recommend that if you've got a big list with high volume. Otherwise it's just a load of hassle and it doesn't give more complexity for no extra benefit. So the main thing really is just to keep things as squeaky clean as possible. And then, it's just warm things up gently as well. So if you're going to set up a new product with a new domain or something like that, then just, find the folks that are most engaged and send that to them first and just do things gradually and gently. But, I'm not a huge fan of changing domains or adding domains, things like that, unless there's a really good reason to. If you're going to go through a rebrand or something like that, or if you're going to switch email platforms, I've worked with some people, they might switch from, say, they might switch from Active Campaign to Klaviyo or something like that. Anytime you do a switch, start by moving your most engaged subscribers over first. Ideally, all the ones that have opened something in the last 7 days, move them across first. Use those as a way of kind of priming the new domain. Make sure you're getting good results with that. And then you get your slightly less engaged people, and you go back further and further until you've moved all the people that need to be done. But you can't just suddenly move everything over onto a brand new domain just like that, because Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, they are very suspicious of change. So you've got to make sure that if you're going to do anything different, do it gradually. It's like if you're sending one email a week or one email a fortnight and you're suddenly going to go into a full-on launch mode, don't send 2 emails a day after you're sending one email a fortnight, because again, they'll notice, they'll think something's wrong and they're going to filter your mails out. So again, you've got to ramp up gently. Always do things gradually, never rush anything.
Got it. That makes sense. And then I think the T is the last
Transform your content. Absolutely. Now, the days are gone when if you had the word free in an email, you got filtered. It's a lot more sophisticated now. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it, it's how the email looks, it's how you format it. There's all kinds of things in there. Got a nice simple acronym for this to help you remember, and it's called WILF. Words, Images, Links, Formatting. And the words is simple. Keep it nice and conversational. An interesting little tip here is Microsoft in particular are much more likely to filter an email out if you have the words click here. So any kind of real imperative, strong call to action might get filtered. You've got to be a little bit more subtle.
So what would you say instead if you don't say click here?
So maybe if you've got a button, it might just say, sign up now or sign up here or something like that. It's just got to be a little bit, or maybe if you put the benefit on the button rather than the actual call to action. It's like, save my seat or something like that, or join now or join the webinar. Or sometimes if it's a text thing, you might say, use this link to do whatever. So just be a little bit softer with that. The thing to remember with all content rules is they're more guidelines than rules. So it's always worth testing because your audience might behave a bit differently. But in general, keep the email short. Don't make it sound too spammy. Make it be, conversational. And the more of a hard sell you've got in the email, the more, again, if you're writing, direct response copy like it's 2012, that's more likely to get filtered now than it did in the past. So what I would say there is get people through to your sales page or your registration page or whatever it is as quickly as you can, because then you can say what you want on. Right. So that's the important thing there. So keep it nice.
Keep it short. Keep it punchy.
Totally.
Push them to the link. Push them to the buy button, but don't say click here.
Absolutely, and be conversational. Don't just do hard sell because you've got plenty of time to do that once you get through to the sales page and things like that. But it's okay. Cart close day. Then absolutely. At that point, then you turn up the gas a bit and say, right, now's your last chance. Go and buy this stuff now. So you can get the mix. You can have a mixture, but you've got to get the balance right. If every single email is a sales email, you're going to spend the rest of your life in promotions tab, and that's not a huge problem because people buy from the promotions tab. It's not a disaster if you end up in there. But you want to make sure you've got that mixture between education, information, as well as offers. Make sure you get that right. So that's the words. Images. If you have too many images, you're more likely to get filtered. So a rule of thumb is around 2 to 3 images that are relevant. If you're an e-commerce website and you have a link to 20 products inside one email, then don't despair and don't pull all them out, because Amazon and Co send those sort of things out all day long and they get away with it. But if you don't need those images, the fewer images, the more likely you are to not be filtered. So that's the important thing there. And the same is true with links. The fewer links in the email, the more effective it's going to be. So if you're sending out a newsletter once a week with 10 links to 10 different articles, maybe send an email a day with 1 link in it or something like that. If you're sending out a sales email that's held the same call to action 5 times dotted down the email, that still counts as 5 links. So maybe just reduce that and just make sure you have one clear, prominent call to action somewhere and maybe have a second one somewhere else. But again, the more images, the more links, the worse it gets. And for the love of all things sacred, if you've got an email signature with your Facebook, your Instagram, your YouTube, your LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff on there with lots of little images and lots of little links, please take that out because it's going to get you much more likely to be filtered. And if you've got a strong call to action in your email, like attend this webinar or buy my stuff or whatever, why would you want to distract them by sending them off to see fluffy kitten pictures on Facebook? You want to stay focused. Do not have all this stuff in there, please. And then the last one is formatting. Again, test this with your audience. But at the end of the day, majority of audiences still react better to plain, simple emails. Don't have all the red writing to highlight things and underlines and italics and bold text and stuff like that. Like again, looking like a 2012 sales page. Don't do that in email. Make it nice and simple. Make it look like it's an email you're sending to your mom or something like that. Or if you want to go whole hog, then you can get a nice, beautiful HTML template, but make sure it's nice and pretty and consistent. And in most cases, you'll still find the plain text outperforms it. But some people want or need to be pretty, fair enough. But again, test it, work out what works better because you might be surprised.
Yeah, this is very powerful stuff, Adrian. I feel like a lot of these things, like maybe we don't stop to think about, right? Because they're pretty nuanced as marketers, but it seems like they could make or break our emails getting delivered.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, I mean, we've covered the main part of the SMART framework there, but I'll share a few kind of metrics that really matter here because a lot of people, they don't realize, they say, hey, I'm getting a 20% open rate and they feel happy with that. But Here's the thing. If you're not getting a 50% open rate or higher with your emails, you're probably doing something really badly wrong. You should be getting 50% plus. You should be getting at least a 1 or 2% click rate. I've worked with clients who are getting 3, 4, 5% click rates. Again, if you're not getting that, then you need to work out why. And then the other side of it, I've mentioned about the people that have never clicked a link on your email. You've got to find them and weed them out. But the other thing to look at then is, what is the click rate of your new leads? If you're getting, particularly if you're launching a webinar and you might be getting referral partners promoting you, it might be your own ads, whatever it is. Look at the click rate. Supposing we generate 5,000 new leads.
Yeah.
We need 40 to 50% of those to be clicking within the first 15 to 30 days. If they're not clicking in the first month, you're wasting your investment in traffic. Unless it's a JV where you get paid based on sales, in which case that's less of an issue. But if you're investing a lot of time in organic SEO or paid for ads or anything like that, you need to get that click rate of your new leads as high as possible. The open rate should be like 90%. And I don't mean that the individual emails get a 90% open rate, but we're saying if you add 1,000 new leads to your email list, you should be getting 900 of those engaging in the first month. And you should be getting about 500 of them clicking. If you're not getting those sort of numbers, then that's something that you can improve just by starting with putting the things into effect that I've mentioned already. And obviously you can go right down into the weeds with that stuff. We work with clients that really want to move the needle on their email and can make a huge difference, particularly if you've got a big email list. But just doing the basics that we've mentioned is enough to make a significant positive impact for the majority of people.
Yeah, this is those numbers. I wouldn't think that would be like the numbers. I mean, the click-through rate, yeah, but like when you're saying 50% open rate, like I didn't even think that was still a thing. No,
exactly. And it's just because most people don't realize that you've got to segment out the people that aren't opening.
Yeah.
Keep mailing them. Then a lot of the low open rates are because people are just mailing the folks that are just never open for weeks or months.
Yeah.
Take them away, and obviously it's simple math. If you halve the size of your email list and take away the folks that haven't opened for a while, you're going to double your open rate. It's as simple as that. The numbers won't change, but the percent will, and it's that percentage that Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo care about.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. I know we're getting close to wrap it up here, but headlines and hooks. Are there any headlines or things that you shouldn't put in the subject line?
The thing, there's no hard and fast rule here. The thing to bear in mind is that there is a lot more attention paid by the Google AI filtering algorithm to the subject line and any calls to action, buttons, things like that. So you've got to be careful. And if if you're doing a particularly big promotion where you're going to have a lot of people seeing a particular email, then it's worth doing some testing in advance. But as long as the content isn't too spammy, then you should be okay. There's a tool, it's called Blogie's Tools. They've got a spam word checker. And if you just Google Blogie's Tools spam checker, then it'll give you a website where you can paste your email in and it'll highlight all the words that it thinks are spammy in yellow. And it's not a hard and fast rule here. This is definitely an art rather than a science. But because it's very subjective. I mean, Sure. What counts as a spammy word? Is it the word free? Is it investment? Is it get rich quick? Who knows? But if you can use different words to the ones that they highlight in yellow, that might help. But I wouldn't say there's any particular never use this word rule or anything like that, because if it's relevant to your niche, then it's okay to use it. If you're using it out of context, then it probably isn't. So, again, the only thing you can do really is just test it, keep an eye on things, and make sure that you're not doing anything too crazy and not sending anything that's too outrageous.
Another question that I had was, I think I lost my train of thought here. Give me 1 second. In terms of the spam, so like, let's say I launch a webinar, we crush it or whatever, or maybe like we don't hit the numbers that we anticipate. And then I go back and look and I'm seeing that like we're in the spam, or we're mid webinar, or we're like mid cart, and I see that we got hit with spam. Like, what's the process for getting out of spam, Joe? Is that possible?
So
if you're in promotion time?
During the time of the promotion, if most of your emails are going to spam, by then it's a bit late, because typically to get yourself out of Google jail, you've got to dial right back and literally only mail the people that have opened something very recently indeed, and it will typically take a few weeks to a few months to actually turn that around. So you've got to stay on top of it really quickly. The thing to bear in mind though is that if you see a handful of emails going into spam, don't worry about that, because what happens with one person will not be the same experience as everyone else. All of the whole spam filtering is very much personalised, and it's like if I receive an email, supposing I'm on your list and I receive all your emails, if I ignore them for a while, your emails to me will go to my spam folder. But if someone else has been opening all of your emails, they will still get delivered. So, the challenge we face is there is no software out there that can tell you whether your emails are landing in everyone's spam folders or not. If someone sells you any kind of reporting software like that says, hey, we'll tell you how much you're going to spam, you can't believe it that much, because all they're doing is they're monitoring lots of seed addresses and seeing what's happening with those. They can't tell what's happening to all these tens or hundreds of thousands of people you're mailing, because there's no monitoring there. The only people that know that are the Googles and the Microsofts of this world, and they ain't telling nobody.
Yeah, they're keeping that in a black box somewhere in the background.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask you about AI. Does that hurt or affect deliverability when you're writing with like ChatGPT or any of Claude, any of these other tools out there?
Yeah, I don't think it does yet. Firstly, it's very difficult to detect if something's written by AI or not. But I think you've got to be careful how you keep an eye on the quality of that AI generated copy. As long as you read it and you're happy with it, then that's cool. But I know that if you don't get your prompt quite right, then it might be putting all kinds of fancy words in there. It might be making it too difficult to read. But as long as you give it the right prompt and it can learn your voice sufficiently in an ideal world, the better. If you went from sending stuff that was written by hand by you and you suddenly switch to an AI voice that's completely different, that might get noticed by Google's AI saying, hey, there's a change here. But on the whole, AI is a really awesome tool for helping you get more emails out. So just use it wisely. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a particularly bad thing at this stage.
Got it. Any last words for marketers out there who are running webinars? They're using email to get in front of their audience and to sell and pitch their offers.
I think the main thing is, assuming that your authentication is set up, just pay very close attention to your engagement. Particularly as the rules are getting tighter and tighter. And one thing is, some email platforms don't even allow you to identify things like people who haven't clicked in a year and that kind of thing. So make sure your platform gives you enough reporting to keep an eye on the metrics that I've shared that matter. Because if not, then you're flying blind and you might not even be able to weed out those contacts that you don't want to be mailing. But as long as you're keeping an eye on your engagement and sending the decent content to the right people at the right time, you can't go wrong.
Awesome, man. I know also that you have a great bonus that you've put together that you're so gracious to give to the people that upgrade to the VIP members pass. Can you tell us a little bit about that bonus?
Yeah, absolutely. So when all the fuss started about authentication and people weren't sure if they were set up correctly, then we've created an authentication checker tool. And even if you haven't set this up, even if you haven't checked it recently, then it's worth running your particular emails through this tool, because what it will do is it will tell you whether your DKIM is set up correctly. It'll tell you whether your SPF is set up correctly, which is something I didn't mention earlier because it's not one of the new rules, but again, it's best practice, and it'll make sure your DMARC is correct. And the important thing is it will check it for all of your different platforms. So you can do it for, you might be using ActiveCampaign, you might be using, Help Scout, you might be using Webinar Jam, whatever platforms you're using. You can send a test email from each of them to this authentication checker, and you'll hopefully get loads of green check marks. If you get any red crosses, then you've got something to fix still. And one of the things we're going to be developing at some point is a way of actually monitoring that as well. So that's a little thing kind of for the future. But also, if you take the authentication check, We'll also then be offering the email health check that doesn't work with every email platform out there, unfortunately, but it works with 15 of them. And you'll be able to check some of these metrics that I mentioned earlier on. It just literally analyzes your sending, and it will give you a lot more of an indication into whether you're doing okay or whether you need to raise your game and all this kind of thing. So there's lots of ways we can help with that. And the authentication checker, and then the health check that comes beyond that is a great resource just to make sure that everything is set up as well as it should be.
Awesome, man. So everybody listening, you'll want to make sure you go and grab that authentication checker and the health checker. You can grab that by clicking below and upgrading to the VIP pass for all of our members. Also, you will also get the transcripts, the MP3s, the recordings, everything else is included from the sessions. And you want to make sure you do that today now, because it's not going to be gone. It's not going to be here forever. And once it's gone, it's gone. So click the button down there to make sure you upgrade to the VIP members pass and jump in and get exactly what we've been talking to you about today. Hey, Adrian, if the people want to connect with you and they want to find out more about what you're up to, what's the best place for them to connect with you?
Yeah, easy peasy. Any problems, anything we can help with, always happy to help. Just drop me an email. My email address is adrian@emailsmart.com, and we'll be happy to get back in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for your time, man. This has been amazing. I know we covered a lot here. You talked about the Wolf, that acronym. You broke down SMART, telling us about the open rates. What should we be doing? Our lists, 50% of our lists may not even be engaged, so it may not be as valuable as we think. It may actually be a liability if we're not using it correctly. So a lot of these things are going to be super valuable for the audience, anybody running webinars out there today. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, Vernon. Thanks a lot.